Hello, I am Eddie O'Sullivan, and this is This Week in the Italian Campaign. In This Week in the Italian Campaign, brought to you by the Freedom for Italy Network, the start of Operation Diadem on the 11th to 12th of May, 1944. On the evening of Thursday, the 11th of May, Allied artillery laid a smokescreen across the Gustav Line as usual. At 11 o'clock that night, 1,600 guns opened fire from the Tyrrhenian Sea to the Apennines. An American heavy cruiser fired its 8-inch guns to add to the bombardment on the two-corps front. After 40 minutes, the artillery switched to the infantry's first objectives. It was the signal for the 5th and 8th Armies to begin their long-planned assault on the Gustav Line. This involved the 8th Army's XIII Corps and 2 Polish corps in Operation Honka attacking on the right, while 5th Army's French Expeditionary Corps and America's 2 Corps advanced on the left. In the XIII Corps sector, the 4th Division's targets were 4 roughly parallel lines extending north to southwest of the Gari. The brown line, up to 1,000 yards from the river, which mainly followed the road from Cassino to San Angelo di Fiodice. The blue line, which was on higher ground, about 1,000 yards further west. The red line, which bulged out by about 2,000 yards from the blue line to the Piapeto stream, and the green line, the final objective, where 13 Corps was scheduled to connect with the Polish Corps coming down from Monte Cassino. It extended from the ridge overlooking the railway and Highway 6 to Colle Menace, overlooking the Piapeto. 2 of 4th Division's brigades were deployed to cross the Gari. 10 Brigade comprised the 1st 6th East Surrey Regiment, the 2nd Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire Regiment, and the 2nd Duke of Cornwall Light Infantry. 28 Brigade comprised the 2nd King's Liverpool Regiment, 2nd Somerset Light Infantry, and the 2nd 4th Royal Hampshire Regiment. 10 Brigade had 42 boats for the Gari to ferry men across the river at points named Rhine, where the Ascensiore stream entered the Gari, and Orinoco, 600 yards downstream. 28 Brigade's crossing points were X, 500 yards downstream from Orinoco, and Y, 250 yards downstream from there. The plan called for the Royal Engineers to build 3 Bailey bridges over the Gari, Amazon between Rhine and Orinoco, and a Blackwater and Congo below X and Y. The first of the Surreys to get over the Gari swam across the river to fix the line for the ferry. The battalion crossed and entered minefields, where they were met by machine gun, mortar and artillery fire. The battalion was followed by the Bedfordshire and Hertfordshires and then the Duke of Cornwall Light Infantry. By dawn, 10 Brigade had a shallow bridgehead. As the morning mist dissolved, it was hit by heavy German fire and couldn't advance to the blue line. 28 Brigade's 2 advanced battalions, the 2nd Kings, followed by the 2nd Somerset Light Infantry, suffered serious casualties getting across the river. They were pinned down on the riverbank without making much progress. To the left, 8th Indian Division's 17 and 19 Brigades started to cross the river at 1:45. The division's objectives including establishing 7 crossing points named Cardiff, London, Oxford, Plymouth, Quebec, Edenbridge, Tunbridge, and Swindon. The plan called for 1 Canadian Armoured Brigade under command of the Indian Division to enter the bridgehead once it had been secured, so 6 of the bridges were to be tank-bearing. 17 Brigade's lead battalions were the 1st Royal Fusiliers and the 1st 12th Frontier Force Rifles. They successfully crossed north and south of the fortified village of San Angelo di Fiodice. Mist, compounded by smoke, slowed the attack. At dawn, it was halted by massive German fire. The brigade's 3rd Battalion, the 1st 5th Gurkha Rifles, took 5 hours to cross the Gari, but were in the bridgehead by the morning. To the south, 19 Brigades lead battalions were the 3rd 8th Punjab Regiment and the 1st Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, with the Punjabis on the left and the Highlanders on the right. They crossed the Gari by boat, but, like 17 Brigade, were held up by mist, smoke, and German fire. 19-year-old Kamal Ran was later awarded the Victoria Cross for bravery for his role in the fighting. By 8:40 on the morning of the 12th of May, the Indian Division's engineers had completed Oxford Bridge about a mile south of St. Angelo, but their efforts at a second site above the village had been stopped by German fire. About an hour after the completion of Oxford Bridge, 2 Sherman tanks of the Calgary Regiment approached the Gari at the Plymouth crossing point. The leading one, with a turret removed, carried a 100-foot Bailey bridge. It drove into the bed of the Gari, the crew escaping just before it submerged. A second tank drove forward and the bridge on the back of the carrying Sherman was pushed to the far bank. 2 squadrons of the Interior Regiment, supported by the 17th Indian Brigade in the St. Angelo sector, crossed Oxford, but before they could reach the lateral road, half their tanks were bogged in the marshy river flat. During the afternoon, 14 were returned to action, and the Ontario spent the rest of the day clearing isolated enemy positions south of St. Angelo and working their way northward along the river road. On 19th Brigade's front, Plymouth Bridge was temporarily put out of action by a shell after only 4 tanks of the Calgary's leading squadron had crossed. Yet, before nightfall, the greater part of 5 Canadian squadrons had reached the German side of the Gari, and on the left flank of the bridgehead, the surviving 4 tanks of the Calgary Sea Squadron pushed forward 1,000 yards. By the end of the 12th of May, 13 Corps had gained only half of its initial objectives. 4th Division's bridgehead north of St. Angelo was still without armour. Nevertheless, the Gustav Line had been penetrated, and there were tank-bearing bridges across the Gari. On the Monte Cassino Massif, 2 Polish Corps launched its attack at 1 o'clock in the morning of the 12th of May. The plan called for 5 Wilenska Brigade or 5 Krasowa Division, led by 13 Wilenska Rifle Battalion, to capture the northern area of Phantom Ridge, followed by Colle St. Angelo and the southern section of the ridge to Point 575. It was to be followed by 18 Lvovsky Battalion of 6 Lvov Brigade. The 1st Carpathian Rifle Brigade of the 3rd Carpathian Division, led by its 2nd Battalion, was to capture Snakeshead Ridge, including Point 596. Its 1st Battalion was to advance through the gorge to take Albanetta Farm, while tanks would protect the northern flank using the track from Colle Maiole to the farm. The attack was supported by artillery and mortar fire, but many German positions were dug in and immune, and return fire was mounted from reverse slope locations the Polish artillery couldn't hit. Fighting was intense throughout the day. Point 593 was taken, and 5 Brigade had much of Phantom Ridge, but 2 Polish Corps Commander General Anders, shocked by the heavy losses, concluded that the action couldn't be sustained, and ordered both attacking brigades to withdraw to their starting positions that evening. On the French Expeditionary Corps front in the Aurunci Mountains, the 2nd Moroccan Division, which had the main role in the initial attack, was concentrated on the slopes of Mount Ornito. To the left was the 4th Mounted Division, with the 1st Motorized Division on the right. Most of the 3rd Algerian Division was in reserve, except for a task force composed of the 4th Tunisian Infantry and 755 Tank Battalion in the south part of the 4th Mounted Division zone. The 8th Moroccan Infantry gained the crest of the 2,600-foot Mount Faito by 3 o'clock on the morning of the 12th of May. The Moroccans moved down the western slopes before dawn and began to work their way towards the saddle connecting Faito with Mount Feucci. By 11:30, they were stopped at the saddle between the 2 summits. The 4th Moroccan Infantry quickly gained the slower slopes of the 2,500-foot Mount Cherasola. At midnight, they were hit by remotely controlled flamethrowers, which had been dug in to cover minefields. The 4th Moroccan Infantry continued to advance across the east side of Chirisola and on the left started up the summit. During the morning they attempted to move around the western slopes of Monte Cassino, but were blocked. The 5th Moroccan Infantry was moved up from reserve to the left flank of the regiment just before noon. Both units were formed into a task force for a renewed drive after midnight on the 12th of May. The 1st Motorized Division has struck German forces holding the bend in the Garigliano River soon after 11 o'clock on the night of the 11th of May. This had been preceded by work to fill in an anti-tank ditch and the completion of an infantry footbridge over the river behind the lines. The first wave of the armour jumped off at 5 o'clock in the morning of the 12th of May. The attack was carried on by infantry backed by tanks and tank destroyers. German positions on the wooded knolls of Conventi were captured, while the motorized division advanced to the heights to the west before noon of the 12th of May and captured Hill 290 on the east slopes of Monte Cassino before daybreak. Light tanks of the 1st Motorized Division moved to the east bank of the Garigliano after dark, and a battalion of howitzers crossed the river to join the infantry cannon companies. A ferry was installed downstream of the footbridge, and preparations made for a fresh assault on the 13th of May. On the II Corps front, the objectives were a series of stronger points on a ridge rising up to 600 feet, which was divided by the road from Minturno to Santa Maria Infante. The 350 Infantry Regiment of the 88th Division secured its initial objectives from Ascenti Creek to Castelforte by the end of the 12th of May and waited until the French had cleared the north side of the Castelforte road. 351 Infantry Regiment of the 88th Division attacked along the road to Santa Maria, supported by 349 Infantry and a platoon of the 760 Tank Battalion. It was halted at 3 o'clock in the morning between the village and Tame. A counterattack was repulsed. On the 85th Division front, 338 Infantry Regiment attacked the ridge between Tame and Solacciano. 339 Infantry crossed Capadacqua Creek and headed for San Martino Hill and high points east of Scauri. By the end of the 12th of May, 338 had reached Solacciano, but Germans were still on the ridge. Tanks and tank destroyers in support of 339 attacked tanks in Tame and German defences on a high point. Before midnight, the assault companies were pulled back and consolidated on the southeast slopes of the ridge west of the road to Santa Maria. After heavy fighting, 339 reached the crest of San Martino after midnight, where it was hit by a counterattack and shell fire. For the 5th Army, like the 8th Army, the 12th of May had only been partly successful, but it too had fractured the Gustav Line in places. The collapse of German positions across the entire front was now a matter of force and of time. On the 12th of May, Royal Irish Fusiliers Captain Lawrence Franklin Vale wrote to his wife Olive in the UK from Formicola, where his battalion was preparing to join the battle in the Leary Valley. Naturally, no one is particularly thirsting to fight. When you've been in a few battles, you do not go out of your way to seek more. But there is a good steady spirit, morale is high, and we will tackle whatever job comes along in best spirit, ready to do our utmost. We know what a bloody business war is and have no illusions about it, but at the same time, we face the immediate future with quiet confidence. You know, when it all boils down, one is fighting for very simple things. I thought the commanding officer expressed it extraordinarily well when speaking to the battalion this morning. He said that what he was fighting for was to return to his wife before he was so old and fat that she would run away with another man. Of course, this raised a great laugh, but everyone agreed with the sentiments. Well, I don't anticipate my wife will run away with another man, but I think I'm really fighting for you and Valerie to sit down in our own house to feel that you are near to me again, to talk to you about all the things we have been through here, to see Valerie grow up and enjoying her, to take our dogs Sadie and Sylvia for long, ambling strolls, to watch a cricket match at Lord's, to have nice cups of tea and plenty of cakes at tea time. I suppose I will want other things afterwards, but it is what I feel I want at the moment. We have had some fine times together. Life has not always been easy, but I have been more than lucky in having a wife who has stood by me so well, and I am tremendously proud of you, my darling. You have meant an enormous lot to me. And although there are times when I regret I have not shown it, I can assure you that sitting out here writing this, I more than fully realize it. The good times will come again. But in the meantime, don't worry more than you can help. I am more than glad that you have our darling daughter. Daddy longs for the day he will see her again. Lawrence. Well, that very emotional letter that concludes this episode was written by Captain Franklin Vale when he was fully aware that his battalion, together with the Irish Brigade and the whole of the 78th Division, was going to be brought up to continue the breakthrough into the Leary Valley through the bridgehead of the 4th Infantry Division. And it captures a lot of the emotions that thousands and thousands of men like him were feeling at this point, because this is going to be the biggest battle of the Italian campaign so far, and he knew it. We'll be coming back to Lawrence Franklin Vale's story on a daily basis over the next week. So anyway, the plan is that is the first day, the first 24 hours of Operation Diadem. We will be doing further daily reports right up to the 18th of May. And during that period of time, I and the London Irish Rifles Mission will be in the casino area. And we will be walking the ground, going to the areas that we have read, that we've spoken about today. So the crossing points, we're going to the Amazon Bridge crossing point on Monday, the 13th of May, for the ceremony to mark the spot and the time when the Amazon Bridge over the Gari was eventually constructed. And then we'll be paying our respects at the cemeteries in the area. We'll be going to the Abbey and Monte Cassino. We're planning to go to Anzio to walk the battlefields there. And then we will return to attend the Polish event at the Polish War Cemetery on the 18th of May, and the British and Commonwealth event, which is taking place on the 19th of May. Both events will be very heavily attended, very significant moments. So if you're in the area at the time, seek us out. We're there, and we'd love to meet you and share this experience with you. Anyway, that's it for this week. I will be back, not next week, but another couple of days, when I'll be telling the story of what happened on the 13th of May. And so until then, from everybody here at the This Week in the Italian campaign, it's goodbye, good luck, and may God bless you all.